So welcome, listeners. Thanks for joining me on this podcast. Really appreciate everyone here who's listening, and hopefully you're getting some value out of them. And I'm sure you're going to get some value out of today. I have a wonderful guest joining me today. If you just don't want to hear me drone on and on. So I got EJ Fernandez here. He's the president and owner of Ed James Insurance Brokerage, right? So really happy to have EJ here. I've known him for a number of years. I think we have a lot of common threads, shared values. I've always enjoyed sort of chatting with him just about certainly business, but life in general, right? I think we have a lot of connections in a lot of ways, and I really appreciate and always love chatting with him. So I thought I'd bring him on here to have him share a little bit more about his journey in business and life and entrepreneurship, and hopefully we'll get some tremendous sort of insights and nuggets out of it for your own personal benefit. So EJ, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Let's record it and see if we sound crazy or not.
I hope so, right? I think crazy is good sometimes. So listen, EJ, why don't you to kind of kick off this one. I mean, I think we prior to hitting record here, we were talking about life in general and balance, right? Family. I know you're a big family guy, and musician, all these things. And so why don't you share a little bit with the listeners about a little bit about your background, right? Obviously your business, and we'll kind of get sort of shift gears after that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I think it's worth noting that actually, for a long time, I kind of grew up, as a teenager with the mentality of, wanting to get a big corporate job, running a company or as an executive or something, where I was working all the traveling all over the place and kind of putting that as like what I wanted to attain kind of more than anything else, definitely more than having a family or thinking about what, that might do. And, it might have been kind of part of like how I grew up. And my dad had a kind of big corporate job like that for a while. And, but then he kind of made a switch from traveling all over the place to getting a job for a New Jersey insurance company, still a big job, but he was, home all the time and was definitely at a lot more of my games and, taking me to school and just seeing him generally on a daily basis. So I just don't think I put a ton of thought into what I really wanted until I was like late 20s, like last couple of years, honestly. Right. So really not until recently. And, I've been in insurance, because my dad was in insurance for a long time. Like when I was 16, all my internships were at insurance companies. And, once I got out of school, I told myself I was never going to do insurance. And of course, here I am. And I bartended for a while, really trying to figure out like, man, what am I going to do? And then when I needed to settle down at some point and figure something out. So I stuck with what I knew. I worked for an Allstate agency for a little bit. Not too long after that, me and my now wife had our first kid. And so, that was kind of a game changer all around. And I still don't think that it had fully hit. But at that period in time, I wasn't making a ton of money working at the Allstate agency. It was like maybe $50,000 a year. And we kind of had a decision to make where my wife had only really worked in restaurants. And, it was like, okay, well, the amount of time that you could spend maybe 15, 20 hours a week working to make how much money, and
right.
And then I would have to work less and we'd have to get childcare and it just might not be worth it anyway. So it was a kind of a hard decision that I think a lot of people face, but it's really tough to have the courage to decide like, okay, like I was like, Jen, like you're not, don't work. And she didn't want to work. She wanted to take care of the kid and thought it would be better for our son. And I was going to grind it out, but just not accept the status quo. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't going to be okay with, like, I'm going to make more money. I'm going to find a better job. I'm going to sell more insurance. I'm going to, consistently always find ways to improve myself and my business. And so, I grinded out for a little bit and made a switch to a job that made a little bit more money, but had a lot more upside potential in a career. And that was at Arthur J. Gallagher, where I was working there for about 5 years. It was recently before I, started my business. And that was when I kicked it into full gear. You know what I mean? Like I knew at least that I needed to improve as a human being, as a person. I had a lot of things that I needed to work on. And, there was probably a bunch of factors that got me there. That's an entire different conversation, right? But it wasn't just like in sales in my business. I mean, yes, that needed to be improved too, but like how I built relationships and my relationship with my wife at home and being a better father and being more organized and better habits, taking better care of myself. I wasn't taking vitamins. I wasn't eating healthy. I was like overweight, drinking too much. I smoked cigarettes for a long time. Like any bad, eating a bunch of sugar, cavities, like any bad thing, like you name it, right? Like it was there. And so it was like one by one, I had to like focus on these things that I was going to try and improve until I could become closer to the ideal of what I was shooting for. And like I said, I don't think I've, kind of really got there until super recently, last couple of years. It takes a long time.
Was there anything very specific other than maybe your family growing and such that really pushed you to say, hey, I gotta take charge of this?
I think it was just I just had that moment. And it's pretty common actually for a lot of people around. I was 27, around that age, where it's like I like opened my eyes finally, like look, like saw all of these things that for a long time I thought were fine. Like I have time, you know what I mean?
Right.
And it was like I don't really have time. I want to be the healthiest that I can be now. I want to be the best that I can be now. It's not going to just fix itself. I'm not just going to be some amazing salesperson. I'm not just going to be an executive because it just happens. You know what I mean? I've got to put in the work. Relationships, you don't stay together with your spouse by, staying the same over time, right? Like you both change, you both grow, you have kids change you, the kids change, and that's super stressful. So I think that's what's so hard about just, being an adult and having a family and, trying to grow. It's such a daunting task to think like, man, how am I going to get ahead in life? Where am I going to find the time? So I couldn't possibly fit anything else on my plate. And, I found pretty quickly that those were, for me, just excuses.
Yep.
100% just excuses. And once I started picking one thing at a time, where it was like, all right, I don't need an hour and a half in the morning before I even like start doing anything. Like that's what literally it was like an hour and a half of like yawn, drink my coffee, like scroll on my phone. It was just how can I be more efficient with my time, with my day, with everything in my life. I don't know. Like it's like I use the example of I make a smoothie every day in the morning, right? And for a long time I would like take one thing out, right? And like use that thing and then like go and put it back, like do something else in between, like take another ingredient out, take it, put it into the cup and rinse and repeat. And the entire process would take me 20 minutes. You know what I mean? It was just like a really long time unnecessarily for doing that task. So I found a way to shorten that down to 5 minutes for me and all my kids' smoothies. Boom, done. You know what I mean? Like there's the time back right there. Clothes are out, ready in the morning, ready to go. Like I know what I'm going to wear. I know that the vitamins that I have to take, they're like in a little container. Like everything's organized. Like I do the same thing every single day and perfect. You know what I mean? So that was, I think the really practical things that helped me realize the bigger picture stuff of like, okay, what do I want to do in my business? Right? Like, and can I achieve it? Do I believe that I can do it?
And belief is a big thing, right? I mean, and obviously motivation too, right? When we talk about our families or, what we want to make out of our lives, right? And sometimes the hardest part is knowing what that is, and it changes, right? And it's a good thing, and we can evolve. But it sounds, we hear these things in life sometimes, like balancing work-life balance or balancing life. And frankly, between me, like I just think it's definitely difficult because we sometimes have to focus on one or two things at a time, right? Because if we try to do it all, it's just like anything, you're trying to multitask, right, in a day. It just, to me, never is efficient, and gets distracted. But it sounds like you're really pinpointing some key areas of life and really putting some attention and responsibility behind it, right? It's important to you, and you kind of tick them off one by one, and sort of it kind of compounds and steamrolls after that.
Yeah, I mean, you got to decide. And listen, there's a bunch of different perspectives on this, and a lot of them are personalized and are right for different people. But it's like, how much money do you want to make, and how much time do you want to spend with your family? Like, can you make both of those things work?
Yeah.
At the same time, like, because number one is like, I don't want to get divorced. It's like, let's make sure that I'm putting in the work, that I have the time to spend with my significant other. I want to be there for my kids. I want to have a relationship. I want to, raise good kids. Physically, I want to be there for them. And that could be different for everybody, right? It's like, again, I'm not like knocking anybody's like setup. There's some people who are, like, we need CEOs of giant companies who work 100 hours a week. Like, we need that in this world. That needs to exist. We also need, the opposite end of the spectrum of people who are doing, every. So it's like, there's no right answer, but like, figure it out, right? And then it's like, all right, how much money do I want to make? And for some people, in some parts of the country, like $50,000 a year, works just fine, and you can have your expenses match it, and you can still save up money, and you can live a lifestyle that's, great for you and your family. Some people, that's like, I want to make $500,000 a year, $1 million a year. For me, that was more like what I was aiming towards. I was like, that's what I want to make, to build some generational wealth for my family. But I also don't want to be living a lifestyle, this grandiose lifestyle, with mansion and, a yacht and whatever stuff, right? It's like, I want to do it to live comfortably and build generational wealth, and, use that wealth to better my personal life and have more time to do with my family and less time doing things like, your yard or like plowing your driveway, like, right? It's like, I don't enjoy doing that stuff. I just don't.
Yeah.
So, the more that I could take that stuff off my hands, I felt like I'd have a better work-life balance. So.
Yeah, and it, we chatted a little bit before this. We got on here is the whether your work or business shapes your life, right? Or can you think of it differently? That, hey, this is a life I want. How do I fit my work and business in it so it supports what I'm trying to achieve in life, right? And how I want to spend my days, because it's always an interesting question, and I still have yet to find anyone who could actually answer it easily. If money was no object, what would you do every single day of the week, right? And so that's the question around building your life. And then you say, okay, then that's what I want. Then I need this kind of resources for it. This is the type of support, whatever it is. Like, and it's just a challenging thing. I still find challenge with it, Yeah. And so how does that fit into kind of how you've started to shape what you're doing in your life and how you're prioritizing things?
Yeah, I mean, like, as a kid, you think about all these things that you might dream about wanting to do. But I think it's also worth noting that, like, you can learn to love whatever it is that you're doing by being really good at it and helping people along the way, right? Like, doing a job. And so that's like what happened with me, right? I didn't dream about insurance. I don't insurance when I was a kid, right? In fact, I wanted to do anything but it, but I found a piece of it that I was very good at, and I became very good at, and it led me. So it was good time to jump back into my story at Gallagher. I got promoted over the 5 years a bunch of times until I was leading other people. I was responsible for other people's growth in their sales and teaching them, and that was a great honor. And I saw that, like, because I try and sit from time to time and think about, like, what does the next 5 years of my life look like, right? And when I looked at that next 5 years, it was either going to be, I could stay the same at that same job managing people, which was a good job and I was making a good amount of money, or get promoted and make a lot more money. But I have twice as many people to manage and flying all around the country, pretty much every week, maybe every other week, something like that. And I just knew that my relationship that I have with my wife and with my kids, eventually it was going to get if I did that, right? It just wasn't going to work. And like you said, when I thought about how do I want to design my life, it's like, well, I want to see my family. And also I built this relationship in New Jersey where I am of people who send me business, friends that I've made, and my parents. Like, I like seeing my parents regularly and my wife's family regularly. And so once I kind of really realized that and believed that, it was like, well, I don't think I want the promotion route, but I still want more money, and I want to challenge myself to do something bigger and better and build like a really significant future for my family. So that was when I made the decision, like, I got to start my own business. I got to start my own insurance agency. I took a lot of time to plan it out. Like, I knew what my sales were. I knew what the projections would be if I just kept doing what I was doing, and eventually hired a couple more people and, tried to use technology and automate the business for the back end stuff. Like, I had a pretty safe bet of, like, here's like the worst that I could do, and here's the best that I could do. And I'm good with the worst that I could do. And anything beyond that is gravy, and it's going to be tough, and I'm going to, it's like, you got to risk stuff. It's like, I got to get a loan. You got to put your house for collateral. You got to have a period of time with no income. It's like, it's a tough decision. But like I said, it was like, I just felt so comfortable doing, what I was doing every single day, that if I was doing it for myself, I would make it work. And then I would also be able to work from home, whenever I wanted to. I didn't have to be on meetings all the time. I could, travel and see my friends, like, wherever. I could take my kid out for the bus and run back inside, or take my kids to the doctor when they were needed. And also, of course, I have 3 kids now instead of just the one. So it's logistically a lot more challenging than it was when I had just the one. So, and like I said, I also didn't want to be the kind of, I guess, husband or dad. I wanted to be helpful to my wife, involved, helping out around the house, involved with my kids, involved with the doctor's appointments and the school and stuff like that. So this was what I found for me allowed me to do that.
Yeah. And a couple of things I take from that. One is, you took some measured approach. You kind of understood the risks you were taking, right? You can't completely control all of it, but you sound like you took some effort to really analyze it and figure out, what it would look like and how do I mitigate them as much as possible. But, I always hear from a lot of people who ask me for investment advice. I said, what do you know more about? And so when I listen to your story, you're investing in yourself, in your business, and where the areas that you know better. Is a risk, of course, right? But I wager a guess that it's probably a higher chance of success, and certainly within your control, more so than a lot of things that people invest in.
Yeah, I think some advice that I give to some people is like, because I've been guilty of it plenty of times where I have an idea and I get excited about the idea, but I start to think like that's too crazy, or like I'm not like fully all in, right? And so I have the idea, I don't write it down. Maybe it comes back to me again like a week later, a month later, 2 months later, something like that. But the advice I have is like when you have an idea like that, like write it down, like get excited about it, get stoked, like explore it, make time to explore it, and like come up with like, all right, like what would happen?
Mm.
Let's write it. Let's play it out. And for me, I know that if I don't ever write those things down, same way with my calendar. If I don't put something in my calendar, like I'm not
Me too.
really serious about it. I'm not serious about it. It's not going to happen. And now that I know that about myself, I hold myself accountable for that. Because nobody else likes when somebody tells you like you're not serious about that, right? Because you don't want to look at yourself in the mirror sometimes. But once you have, you realize the power of doing that, it's like, well, the consequences of looking at myself in the mirror and changing it are that I could have this tremendous upside. Maybe not, but you're never going to know if you don't find out, right?
Right. And you kind of make a decision and you kind of pivot along the way, right? Because it's never going to go a straight line anyway, even the best laid plans, right? And that's just kind of what life is about. It's
Yeah, and I don't have this all figured out. Of course, this is what we were talking about before this, right? It's like,
I do. I have no. Yeah, I have everything figured out. Yeah, and yeah, I'm
all
yeah.
along the way.
Yeah.
Maybe some of us.
Well, that's what I've come to. I've always been a pretty humble guy in general in my life, and I sort of realized quickly how much I know and how little I know around a lot of topics. So that's why it's always good to connect with others. It's interesting. So this is and we're both in do things in insurance, and most people never even want to talk about that side of the world. It's, it can be boring and no, I don't think anyone ever gets into it thinking I'm going to get into insurance business. Well, here we are both sort of, surrounded by it. And, when I'm thinking about balance, and I'm going to segue a little bit, is when I think of life and there's a balancing act, right? Like we've been talking around family, work, and our health, all those things, right? We got to strike that as much as possible. And that same goes in our financial lives, right? Balance. And I often talk about in my world of, protection is one path, and there's a lot of different ways to go about that. And then there's the, wealth accumulation, which is probably the fun, sexier part that everyone loves to talk about, but it's a balancing act. And so when I look at it and the importance of what you do, what I do, what about your side of the world, right? And I know you cover like personal insurances and in business, I believe too, but, talk a little bit about that and sort of what about it you actually enjoy and appreciate more, and what maybe even people don't even really appreciate or understand about it that they should.
Yeah. And so most of my business is personal insurance, which is like car insurance, home insurance, flood insurance, umbrella insurance, jewelry, boats, motorcycles, RVs, stuff like that. Some small business insurance for small businesses. And what's kind of cool is I'm kind of at the point where reviewing the coverages, is very habitual for me, right? Like I see things very quickly of, what should be increased or where people are at. But I think, so having that down is important because then I get to focus on the helping people part, right? And building relationships. And I think what I kind of didn't realize is, because at the end of the day, I'm in sales, right? Like I'm selling insurance to people, but really as an actual advisor, right? I have standards of coverage that I will not write below. There's, if people want that, that's great, but it's just not who I'm able to help. It's not my thing, right? There's plenty of people who fit really well with Geico and fit well with Progressive and, with general whatever, right? But that's that's not who I'm looking to try and help or make a difference for the world. It's like I'm looking to help people who want to know that they're covered properly, and you can have that while also saving money at the same time, not paying too much, because car insurance specifically is a super, commodity industry that people think of. But I think even more exciting was I didn't realize that you could build this business in sales by building friendships and relationships with people in other industries that are not, doing insurance or personal insurance, right? So like you and I, right? Like we do, insurance, but it's completely different types of insurance, right? And the reason why we met each other was because we wanted to build a network. We wanted to generate a referral network of people who trust each other, like each other, and all kind of are able to help the same clients. For me, that's a lot of people in the mortgage business, realtors, real estate attorneys, title professionals, estate planning attorneys, like whatever it is. So I've spent the last 5, 6, 7 years building this network of people that, that's a lot of what I spend my time doing. And that is fun. That is fulfilling. That is something I didn't expect. I kind of didn't really put 2 and 2 together when you hear about, people going out on the golf course.
Yeah.
Like I didn't really get it too much until I started getting into it. And then what's the best part about that is that the referrals that I get, the people that I am talking to already have a little basis of trust, so that the conversations that I'm having are less like, hey, like, let me try and convince you that I'm not trying to scam you, that you can trust me, right? Like, I hate having those conversations. This is why I don't do any cold calling, don't buy any lists, I don't do any marketing. I don't want, people Googling, necessarily looking for my services at a high volume. It's like the people, by the time they come to me or I come to them or get the introduction, is we're having a discussion about like coverage. What are your goals? How much do you pay? How much do you want to save? What's your relationship with your current insurance company or your broker? And as a result, they stay with me for a long time. And I get a lot of just great feedback that makes you feel really good. Like there's nothing better than when you've helped somebody and they see your value and they thank you for it, and they thank you for it over and over again because they continue to see the benefit down the road. So that's been, I think, the most fulfilling part of my business.
Yeah, that's great. And right, and we can talk. I know you and I can nerd out on individual policies and all these things. And fact of the matter is, I think they're important for sure. And people need to understand them. But, what I have found to be true is, once you got that comfort and understanding that, hey, you got someone in your corner really looking out for you, and you're taking some action to protect the things that matter in your life, whether it's your assets or your life, whatever, that allows you to focus on other things, right? That's what I have found the power of this, this world is, you take care of those things and protect them in the way you want, and then allows your mind to focus on other things like growing your business or taking care of your family. Or spending time with your family, and, versus, not having these things in place, it probably causes worry for people and allows them, and it puts them in a negative, unfortunate situation. And maybe it doesn't allow them to take the risks that they want to take in life. Right. And go for things because they haven't got this side of their world addressed. And I kind of see that. And I think it just reduces their potential of enjoying life and becoming all they can be. I know that's maybe a little bit pie in the sky thinking, but I kind of look at it that way. Do some of these hard things and put the things in place that, from estate plan, whatever it is, so that you can focus on the other goodness in your life.
Well, you got to focus on what you can control, right? Because everybody has factors that are out of their control, like their upbringing, where they were born. There's a ton of stuff like that, right? But if you at least focus on the things you can control, do your best at those things to make the best out of those situations. You can take that out of the equation at least to know that you've done your part there. And I think there's a lot of those things like you were just talking about that you take action on.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the best analogy I heard around that was like if you're, driving around a corner and, you don't know what's coming or what could happen and it's dark or whatever, and you're going to go slow. You're going to be super careful because you don't know the outcomes and you're not sure if you're going to be able to survive it. So you're going to take it super slow versus if you have done, like you said, just everything you can control, it'll give you more confidence to speed up, right? And move forward. And I looked at that analogy and I always reference that in my life because, whether it's, working out or, taking care of these things in my life, like it gives me more confidence that I'm at least have a good chance of succeeding going forward.
Yeah.
And living my life. Yeah, that's great. So, listen, we've talked around a lot of different things. I think, EJ, I really appreciate you and your partnership. I certainly, know that, in your business, you take care of people and you're looking out for the best for them. And, always appreciate that about you. One of the things that I always think about wealth and, we talk about money and, the book I read, Wealth Beyond the Numbers, helps to highlight this, that we could be wealthy in all areas of life. And that's kind of what I think you're striving to get. Right. So what would you say today outside of, what's in your bank account or retirement account do you feel wealthy about, and that you really feel grateful for?
Yeah, 100%. Because if I don't have that wealth in my personal life, who cares what I have in the business? It's useless. It really is. So, yeah, I mean, health, right? Like just generally the fact that I'm healthy and my family's healthy, and I have like both my parents in my life. Very grateful for that. I love my kids, like the little things that my kids do every day. They're super, they're 5, 1.5, and 3 months, right? So they do just cute stuff all day, every day. Sometimes not so cute stuff, but I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I am where I'm at the age that I'm at, and that I had the opportunity to change my path and realize what it is that I wanted. So I'm really plain, kind of boring guy. I like that I get to do the same thing every day, more or less, and see my family every day, and we get to try new things on the weekends. It's exciting in that sense. I like my domestic life.
Listen, I think you're mature for your age for sure, and come to these things. It gives me hope for my kids. They'll eventually get there, but it's refreshing to hear. And sometimes, as I get older, obviously the simpler things have much more meaning. You can go after fancy things like say yachts or whatever it is, and maybe there's some short-term high you get off those things and things in life. But to your point, your everyday simple things in life usually are probably the most rewarding and most meaningful for sure. So it's something really to be proud of. So thanks, EJ. Really appreciate your talk. Certainly down the line here, so how best people how can people reach out to you? Is it best through your website, to connect with you and just even network, right? Because it sounds like you love to do that. So how best to reach you?
Yeah, I mean, I can provide phone number and email or something for the chat.
Yeah.
It is www.edjamesins.com. I'm accessible through there. A lot of information on there. I had a great girl who built it for me. Yeah, I'm happy to give out my information. If I can help anybody try to achieve, or just think through what it is that they're looking for too, if it's not in terms of.
Awesome. Appreciate you. We'll definitely be connecting soon. And it's a great thing about these podcasts. We can always have you come back.
That'd be awesome.
Further along as you kind of, build your business and, enhance your life. It's always a fun journey to talk about. So thanks for joining me today, EJ.
Thanks for joining me on this episode today. I really am grateful for you as listeners to the Perennial Pride podcast. I hope you're getting some tremendous value out of it and hopefully pushing you along your journey to financial freedom. I put this podcast together really to help you get more educated around your finances so that you feel empowered to live the life that you really want. And if you like the content that you heard today or watched, then I would encourage you to go to my website, perennialpride.com. There's tons of other content there. And you can access my book, Wealth Beyond the Numbers. You can buy it there on my website. It's a aggregation of a lot of great tips and tools I've learned to not only build my wealth in my accounts, but build wealth in my life and abundance and joy, and something that has a lot of my experiences in the journey that I've been on personally. Hopefully that can be also of value to you as you sort of move forward. So thanks again for being a Perennial Pride listener, and we'll see you on the next episode.